Hello, welcome into another episode of This Week in Sports. Of course, I'm your host, the host with the most, your friendly neighborhood host, Zach. Along with me, I have my hockey expert, Nick.
Howdy, howdy.
If you have not done so yet, please do go check out our website, 321 Pods. You can spell that however you want, except for the Pods part you can't spell that however you want. 321, though, you can have fun
321 and then PODS.
Yes, you can have fun at that. Go check out our website if you have not done so. We'll have all of our different podcasts there for you to go listen to and entertain yourself. If you want, please do also go check us out on Spotify, give us a rating, follow us, all that good stuff.
You can also now find us on YouTube, where we are chopping the show up into the separate bits. So if you're just interested in one sport in particular, you can just go ahead and get right to the meat of things.
Yeah. With all the business out of the way, I have another great week of sports. We are, unfortunately, in an interesting time. We are about, I'd say, a week away from both of our respective favorite sports coming to an end here.
Yep.
So winter sports, very, very close to coming to an end, and that will leave us only with what we have for this summer, which is no Olympics, which is going to be sad.
Very much so. A big hole in our hearts for those wacky summer games.
But we have some good news. There is still baseball around. If you couldn't hear the jest in my voice,
The dripping sarcasm.
It's tough here in the Mile High State. I think that'll be the perfect place to begin with, because a little bit like a story arc. Let's start at the very, very bottom and then work ourselves up to the top.
Yeah, that's a good idea. The baseball was not particularly, it was kind of on par for what we'd expect from the Rockies at this point in the year. So far we have 5 games in the books for this week and only 1 win on the board. The Rockies took 1 of 3 from the Giants, despite leading in all 3 games for significant portions of them. So a little caveat to that one, the Giants were in the middle of a very strange hot streak where they had nearly set the MLB record for 1-run wins in a row. They were going for the record 8, but they won by too many runs. And that was, I think, our Tuesday affair. But a rundown of it was pretty ugly. The series started on Tuesday with a 6-5 loss, and that was with a 5-2 lead going into the 9th inning.
I'll let you finish here, and then I'll ask my question about the weekly wrap-up.
Okay. Then Wednesday's affair was a 10-7 loss. So that was a 3-run win for the Giants, which did break their streak of 1-run victories. This was, again, we were up 6-3 after 6 innings, and that turned into a 10-6 deficit with 1 solo home run in the 9th to have a little consolation for the Rockies. The Thursday game, though, was our little bright spot for the week, with the Rockies turning the tables on the Giants, coming out with their walk-off victory off of a 2-run single from known Rockies hero Orlando Arcia.
I've heard of him, so he is known.
This is as hero as we're getting this year. He did come up with I think bases loaded or second and third, 2 runners on in scoring position, and he did deliver a single to give us an 8-7 victory. So yeah, avoided the sweep in that one. And then we were interested to see how we stacked up against the lowly Braves. The first game happened Friday evening, and that was, once again, a game we were leading 4-1 heading into after 6 innings, I think. No, heading into the 6th is when it all fell apart, because that was when we switched to the bullpen. And our 4-1 lead turned into a 12-4 loss.
I'm curious now, because we've been close in the majority of these games this week. Is that good, or is that just kind of like,
Well, I would say it's a sign of improvement, which is a positive on the whole for the baseball team. We haven't seen an embarrassing blowout in a long time, where it's like 19 to something. So That's improvement. We already know no matter, we're not jockeying for draft position at all. We already know that's kind of a wash. We're not going to get anything higher than 10th. So it's not like you have to worry about, should we lose more? It's not a factor. So on the whole, it's good to see the players making improvements and having progress, but it is also falling back into the familiar tone of the previous era of when the Rockies were bad, which was not as catastrophically bad as they are now, but still bottom of the division. And it was kind of the same thing of when the pitchers are going, the hitters go cold. When the hitters are going, the pitchers go cold. Take your turn on who is disappointing you on any given day.
Do you think this is something we can continue to expect from the Rockies, or are we sort of on that Rockies arc where we're peaking? We're still not winning, but we've kind of reached the point where we're competitive and we'll come back. Unfortunately, it'd be crashing back to earth because
the thing with our team build is because we are so young, the potential for improvement is very high theoretically. That being said, there is also the trade deadline coming up in about a month and a half. So if this is not a thing that we have generally done in the past to maximize value off of existing assets, but it is theoretically possible that this year they do something and the good players are off in different uniforms for the second half of the year.
Do you feel like the management change has anything to do with sort of, I'm going to use the word loosely, but the success that we've had this week?
Yes, there's been a definite sort of change in usage and philosophy. The starters have been given much longer leashes relatively, so the bullpen's not carrying quite so many innings theoretically. That still isn't always the case, but in general, there have been some shifts in who has been getting playing time in what positions. We did see a big wave of roster moves that happened not too long after, like Schaefer got his 2 or 3 series into his tenure. So there's definitely doing some different X's and O's strategy decisions that I think are at least making it a more competitive product, if not a winning one yet.
Do you feel like, not to his own fault, of course, but almost a little bit as well, Bud Black was just kind of not the right manager for this team? Like, the dude that we have now is very young, and he understands that our team is also very young, and we're just gonna have to take the losses for development purpose.
I think for sure there's a little bit of a generational update in the switch over that we're seeing this year, and the downside of that is the inexperience by and large, but Warren Schaefer's resume is essentially 100% with the Rockies organization, so he has at least seen kind of firsthand what the problem is on a pretty consistent basis. So I think it's good to have that perspective coming in, like knowing your team, like there are some weaknesses within your franchise that need addressing or like require different approaches. That Bud Black, while he was known as a pitcher's manager, like because he was a former pitcher, he knew that side of the game.
Something we know very, very well about here in the Mile High State. We love pitchers here.
Yeah, the idea was bring in a pitcher guy to help this young, full of potential rotation. And 10 years in, it didn't, whatever it was not getting any better. It's not his fault he was given the roster he was given, but for sure I think Bud Black's approach had been tried now and the results just weren't coming.
A couple other thoughts that I had there just while you were speaking, right? Because our new guy here is going to basically have 3/4 of a season under his belt by the time it's all said and done. Mm-hmm. And we still have something like 90 games or something left. A lot of baseball left to be played.
We're about 63 games in or so. So another 100 on the docket.
Is it for him? Is it just his job now, or do you foresee the Rockies could really do anything, and we are bound to make a bad decision somewhere. That's just kind of how they work. But is this just like his job? Like overall, like from the beginning where we were laughably bad to now, it's kind of like we're not we're not like the Rockies that we were a couple weeks or months ago. We are feels like a very much so a different team.
There's definitely, I think it's more or less his job now if he wants it. Like, I think that would be the only, because it's not a opening that people are clamoring for around the league unless you're also unless you haven't been a like head coach manager spot before, or if you're like maybe coming out of the minor leagues coaching system, then being the Rockies manager might be an upgrade, but that would be looking for new blood and people outside of the organization, which is historically something Dick Monfort only does as a last resort and only begrudgingly. So yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say there's no one else really hovering around potentially waiting to swipe the position of Rockies manager. It's he's there for as long as he kind of feels like he wants to be, because although it's a very rare thing to see managers like step down voluntarily for whatever reason in baseball. I don't know why that is.
I mean, there's only the 30 jobs in the world for this sport. Well, there's more now, but in the best of the best.
Generally, after you've gotten that big league contract, though, you can kind of be okay going back down to the money. You're doing it for the love of coaching, right? Not the money.
Well, there's the love of the money, but it's also like there's levels to this thing, and like
for sure.
Managing even the Rockies, who are a major league team, is so drastically different than it is down in the minors, where like
theoretically. But yes, I do. Yeah, understand the point of. That is the top tier of the job, and you would like to stay in it. So, but yeah, I think we will be seeing the Warren Schaefer approach for quite a while. Whether or not we see any action around that trade deadline is almost certain to be nothing. I'm predicting no moves whatsoever.
We never really ever do.
We almost never do, especially at the trade deadline. Our moves come either in the off season or like winter meetings, but like historically we just don't play the trading deadline game.
From a philosophical standpoint, and you've witnessed a lot of Rockies baseball in your time now with 165 games a year for 30 plus years. Philosophically, I think it's tough for the Rockies, I think, to ever be a true like pitching dominant organization for the most part. But for some reason, I don't know, you have to have good pitchers. Is there any value to sort of giving up on the pitching game and just sort of loading up on
offense?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the original blueprint of the team back in the Blake Street Bombers days, which was also coincidentally the pre-Humidor days. But that did kind of work as long as you had the gang all together, and the gang was four of the best sluggers of the era, all hitting in the same lineup, basically one after the other, which is fairly unprecedented. Like, Stanton and Judge together in the lineup was kind of the next closest thing I can think of.
Stanton, Judge, Soto, all were
if you had
lineup,
those three guys together, yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, it's hard. Vinny was maybe the weakest of the Blake Street Bombers, and he was still putting up 30 plus a year.
Yeah, there's not very many teams that do that anymore, especially nowadays.
But even like going down that list, imagining the Rockies with that level of talent, or because ideally, Chris Bryant is supposed to kind of be playing that role. Didn't happen.
Even back in the day, like a young Chris Bryant, he's not like a big hitter kind of guy. Like it feels like the Rockies are the only team in the Mile High State that doesn't take advantage of the altitude for the most part.
If anything, the Rockies have to actively fight against it at like literally every level, from the structural standpoint of having to build to do the science to realize, we need to keep the balls hydrated, build the humidor, and we just have to do that now. Yeah, because that's always the Achilles. As much advantage as it gives to hitters on both teams, it's a thing that for pitchers who play on other teams, they have to come to Coors Field. If you're in the division, you have to come here like 8 times a year or something. If you're anywhere else in the league, you come maybe 2 times a year or something. And it's a bad weekend where you have to adjust to altitude sickness and like your pitches feel weird. But for the Rockies, that's half of your year going from sea level back to mile high and like adjusting to it. And it's a thing that you just can't No one else has to deal with it.
Arizona
Arizona's the next highest in elevation, and even they're like 1,000-foot difference. So
yeah,
it's wild. I mean, I think there has to be a different approach than let's try and fight the most uphill battle in the world by getting good at pitching, especially when there are teams like the best pitching teams are at sea level almost generally always.
Yeah, I don't know any pitcher who wants to come here and pitch for like. You have to.
Kyle Freeland was the last one, and he might be the last one ever.
Yeah, you have to want to like break science or something, like prove that you're better than like every scientific outlet there is out there.
If anything, I think there might be something into developing becoming the home of the knuckleball. Because hard pitching and although even that is affected by altitude, your knuckleball becomes less movement and more susceptible to getting blown apart.
Yeah, less knuckly, more ball.
Maybe the trick is just let me do all the pitching. I throw at like half the speed of MLB pitchers. They'll never see it coming. Swings and misses every time.
Or it'll be batting practice, which we kind of throw anyway.
Yeah, no difference or improvement. That's what I'm offering at a very reasonable, let's say $4 million to start.
That's like a quarter of a Kyle Freeland.
Exactly. It's a bargain.
A bargain for sure. Speaking of bargains, we'll move over to the NFL section of this. J.K. Dobbins coming into town on a bargain price for himself. A 1-year deal I do believe he's going to get. It's like 3 or 5 million. Can't remember which one of the odd numbers. But our running back room is starting to look pretty decent here in the Mile High area. Teaming him up with Harvey, who are kind of our dash and smash approach a little bit here. And then Estime, who's has the fumblies sometimes, but he is our big bowling ball. Unfortunately, this does probably mean Jalil's out of a job until somebody goes down.
Which, give it time. The training camp, there's always some injuries around the league, and guys are needed to fill in. But rough go, but we kind of knew that there were going to be some positions with pretty high turnover rates.
The other, like, just looking through contracts throughout the year, Atlanta has a problem because they tried out the Kirk Cousins experiment last year, did not go super well, and for some reason they also drafted Michael Penix in the first round.
Everyone was pretty confused about that move when it happened last year. And now it's kind of like they kind of skated through the season with it being okay-ish for most of it.
Well, kind of, because eventually Penix...
The first half they were okay, and then it kind of, fell apart second half.
Yeah, Penix did end up starting there not too long, much later in the season for the last probably like 4 or 5 games. He was playing a big role in their team. But now Penix slotted in as their starter. Kirk Cousins is due $40 million this year to be just basically a backup.
That's a very expensive backup.
Yeah. But there's also this thing of like, I've been hearing reports that like maybe you keep him there because what if Penix doesn't work out for whatever reason and Kirk is just waiting to buy his time in. And Kirk is being a professional through all of this for the most part.
Sure.
Because I think he's sort of suspecting the same thing. Depending on where you are, the quarterback position can be a very fickle position to be in.
I mean, he knows as well as anybody that you're one play away from having your backup taking your spot.
Very much so. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. I mean, there's really no spot for him now because Pittsburgh got their quarterback with Mr. Aaron Rodgers signing the deal last week that we talked about. So I don't know what you do with Kirk now. Kind of stuck with him, and I do believe he has a 2-year, I think, player option after this as well that I would assume he opts out of because he probably believes
wants to play still. Yeah. Wouldn't want to write. I mean, nice contract to be riding the bench on, but I'm sure, you'd rather be out there playing. Who's the backup behind Mr. Rogers now in Pittsburgh?
It is Rudolph.
Okay.
Mason Rudolph, who left.
Although I don't think Pittsburgh's the type to take on a Kirk Cousins for backup
either. That's an expensive contract, and they're kind of a little bit. I think they're handicapped because they're paying the defense a fairly significant amount of money for some reason, and they also just re-signed DK to a huge contract, so they have to penny pinch a little bit.
Who else needs a quarter? Who's Vegas running out at quarterback these days?
They have the amazing pro quarterback Geno Smith out there as their starter.
That's right. It's Seattle take 2 in Vegas time now.
Yes.
Right,
it is almost a full
full
Seattle team.
transplant of the
Yeah, Pete Carroll went and grabbed his guys from Seattle who was like, I don't want to be here, and the coach don't like me no more.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
team up there. The craziest one while we're on this one is the issue out in Cincinnati. Let me tell you about Cincinnati, since you probably have not heard of this, and I've just stumbled upon this.
Okay.
Cincinnati decided that their young rookie, who they drafted, it was like 7th or 17th, I can't remember which. I think it was 7th overall. It might be 17th, actually. Shamar Stewart, they decided that they are going to try and implement some new contract options in his contract to be the first sort of experiment guinea pig. And he said, nah, dog. And then he left their mini camp. What this means is if he does not participate and he can opt to sit out this season, he can be redrafted again next year.
But not this year.
Nope, he'll have to sit out this full year.
Because the Cincinnati would have his rights for this year or something?
Correct.
Okay.
But he does have the option that if he says, I'm not going to do this and I hate it here, I'm just going to sit out for a year.
And go back to the draft.
And then go back to the draft.
Interesting. I mean, that's a pretty bad business decision from Cincinnati, because that's... Boy, what a way to waste a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, Cincinnati's is one of the oldest teams in the league, but also seems to be the most frugal, I think, by and far, by large, by every report card and player base. I think they've said Cincinnati's sort of the they try to do the Walmart version of things, even though we are the Walmart owners here. They try to.
Yeah, our Walmart owners do not spare any expense. We've gotten the field resodded several times since they've taken over.
Several times owner. There's been some buying of some new property out somewhere in the Denver area for who knows what, potential new stadium or whatever they decide to do. So yeah, that's that fun little wrinkles within the NFL. We'll see how that all works out for Cincinnati. If they're smart, they take out the fun new clauses they decided to add in and experiment with this year that I think the NFLPA and players themselves say that's...
I was going to say, I'm sure the Players Association would love to take a look at those new little wrinkles as well and be like, hey, we have bargaining agreements for a reason, dogs.
Yes and no. I think they only have so much control. The how the contracts are shaped or whatever are very much up to the owners, and that's sort of the reason why a lot of athletes choose not to go the NFL route, because their contracts suck mostly so bad compared to any other sport in the world.
There is a lot of they very little. What am I trying to say? Comparative strength behind the player side.
Yeah, the only contract I think in the world that you're not fully guaranteed. Everything is highly incentive based, like not bonuses. Like it's tied into the contract you're supposed to be getting.
Yeah, I think that's true, because
NBA's full guaranteed. MLB is the highest fully guaranteed.
NHL, I can't think of anyone who's like that. That's not a thing that people worry about it being guaranteed. So yeah. Tough break.
A little bit. With that being said, take us to the ice.
Yeah, it was like we said, we're in that kind of weird period of the year where the seasons are almost done, but not quite. We didn't get any finality yet in our Stanley Cup final series, but we got a couple very interesting games here. Games 3 and 4. And to just give the roundup, our series is tied 2-2, which I believe is the same on the NBA side now as well.
It is. Some saying that this is potentially the greatest NHL playoff ever.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it's been pretty entertaining so far. Maybe that's coming out of Edmonton or of Florida, where if you're part of those fan bases, sure, I'm sure it feels incredible. 3
of the 4 games going to the overtime is the argument there. You don't get to see that every day for sure, and it seems like it's a regularity in throughout apparently all hockey playoffs.
The amount of overtime has been very impressive. The effectiveness of the 6-on-5 late in the game has, I think, taken like a statistical spike this year in terms of like offenses have figured out what they need to do in that last minute drill to, if you have control of the puck, it's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to knock one in. That being said, my big argument against it would have been the Game 3 show that we got from the Edmonton Oilers, which was absolute garbage level goonery in a game that they got blown out of within the first 30 minutes and turned the back half of into not even a boxing match, just outright like assault and thuggery.
I mean, yeah, they do have sort of a good line to make up sort of that thuggery, but at the same time, Florida is also like sort of the annoying child in the league where they just kind of pick and prod at you, and maybe they'll do something a little bit dirty, not that's over the line, but not too far past the line that now it's a police report.
Yeah, just so this being the first road game for Edmonton, this was the first series, at the time the series was in Florida, so you want to come out with good energy, and they immediately started taking penalties, went down 3-1, like I said, in the first 30 minutes, and after that it was not even making hockey plays, just trying to injure people. And yeah, Florida has... this was after this game, everyone was like, oh, this series is over. Florida's in their heads. Edmonton looks absolutely washed. Because of the 10-minute game misconducts that started getting thrown out in the third period, Edmonton finished the game with like 7 guys left on the bench, including Leon Draisaitl and McDavid not playing, I think, in the last 15 minutes of the game because it was too dangerous.
I'm curious, like, there should be some sort of, like, if you're going like way past the line, like, should those not carry into sort of the next game over?
So, something you think, or there is some triggers for like potential suspensions to be handed down for egregious penalties, but I don't remember the last time we've seen a postseason suspension like mid-series for an act on the ice. Maybe a couple years ago there was one where a stick got like intentionally whacked at someone on the bench. I think that one got a suspension. But it takes a lot to get players safe. And this is maybe something we can discuss, because I know this has also been a topic of discussion in the NBA world as well, is the noticeable and definitive change in how the games are officiated come the playoffs, and whether or not that is actually beneficial for the product that they are displaying to their potentially biggest audience, to have the rule set just kind of change all of a sudden. And potentially, like in the NBA, it's a little different because it's rewarding people for like drawing fouls more than anything, that I think is, or like the inconsistency of who's getting those calls. And on the NHL side, it's like, this is supposed to be your most skilled players in the world. Why are you letting them like massacre each other?
The NBA is the NBA is almost the very same way. Like during the season, it's almost to a level like ticky-tacky calls. And then once you reach the playoffs, you can almost mug somebody. And
yeah,
that's okay.
And it's something I like. There is a certain element of like, yes, we do want it to be a little bit more flexible in the playoffs. You don't want to have a game decided because there was like 7 penalties on one team. But at the other side of it, it's like, yeah, you're playing a different game now than the one that was the regular season.
Yeah, I was about to say, I see your point, because now there are 2 almost completely different games. There's sort of the regular season, which you battle through, and in the NHL, you do get a trophy for winning that. And then you have the playoffs, which is sort of the real thing that everyone truly cares about, that not everyone makes it there, but is a completely different game than what I just previously played before.
The 82 that we just did, yeah. And I don't know. So that was kind of the big theme, yeah, in Game 3. Game 4 was a little bit more, I could see an argument for that being a bit of an all-timer, because Florida, now up 2-1, takes a 3-0 lead in Game 4 on home ice, looking like things are going easy breezy. Chased Stuart Skinner out of the net for a second straight game, but Calvin Pickard came in, threw up the brick wall, and the Oilers scored 4 goals in a row to take a 4-3 lead with 3 minutes left in the game. But once again, the Panthers were able to pull the 6-on-5 with the empty net and got a game-tying goal with 19 seconds left on the clock to force OT, where hero of this year for Edmonton, Leon Draisaitl, got his 4th overtime game winner. And I don't know if you remember the tidbit from last week or a couple weeks ago, Joe Sakic's record is 7, and that's for his career of overtime winners. So 4 in one go is incredible.
Yeah, he's done something very special, I think, throughout this playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if for all of the McDavid is our savior talk out in Edmonton, if this one goes home with Edmonton, I think Draisaitl gets the MVP award on this one.
He is their highest paid player.
That he definitely is. The other player to shout out of the series so far has been Sam Bennett, who is now projected to be the top free agent of this upcoming summer, who has almost certainly played himself into like a $12 million plus contract, whether or not he's going to deserve it or play up to it because he's like in his 30s as well. If not 30s, late 20s. He's been around a while, but he is exactly like if Florida wins, he's going to be their MVP because he has been scoring, defending, laying hits, getting under guys' skin, just like the ideal playoff performance pretty much out of Sam Bennett. So he's probably earned himself a nice little payday for the back end there. So that was the game action this week. So like I said, the series is tied 2-2. We have game 5 scheduled for later today on our Saturday record here, I believe. And then our game 6 will not be until next Tuesday. But I believe by next episode, we will have a winner for you. Because if we need to go to a game 7, that will also happen before recording time. So yes, but this one's still anyone's series. We're going back to Edmonton for 1, back to Florida, and then if we have to, game 7 will be in Edmonton. I'm still leaning Panthers though. This Edmonton team is too bipolar, and you don't want the potential for just a bad, like having another game 3. I think makes them the weaker team. Florida has been steady as she goes this entire run.
Yeah, I like Florida's consistency through and throughout the whole playoffs for the most part. They have found sort of the right level of being skilled enough and offensive and defensive enough, as well as also being annoying enough that they kind of come out and it's the same all the way through. Whether they win or lose that game kind of depends on how superhuman the other team can go.
And I would say part of that game 4 collapse from Florida it was one of Bobrovsky's kind of weaker playoff performances to give up what was that final 5-4? Yeah. But he has been certainly a little bit more consistent than the goaltending situation over in Edmonton. Again, it all leans towards Florida in my eyes. Other NHL news, we kind of have the roundup now for end of season awards. And a few noteworthy call-outs there. For the first time in 15 years, I believe, we have the goalie of the year, Connor Hellebuyck, also getting the MVP award.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a fun little combo for him, even though he still did not make it very far into the playoffs.
They are regular season awards.
Yeah, they are regular season awards. The Ted Lindsay Award, which was the player-voted MVP, went to Nikita Kucherov. There was a lot of discussion about Hellebuyck and his heart coming from kind of another voter fatigue thing because the other 2 candidates were McKinnon and Draisaitl, who have both won it in like the last 5 years.
Draisaitl has himself one?
He does have one already, yeah. I think him and McDavid both have one. It's spoils of riches up there. The other news, Cale Makar wins his 2nd career Norris Trophy, and he is all of 25, 26. A little baby still.
Still a little baby.
The Rookie of the Year went to Lane Hutson in Montreal over Macklin Celebrini over in San Jose, who was kind of the main front runner and the position players, but he ended up 3rd. Second place went to Dustin Wolf, who was the rookie goalie out in Calgary. But Lane Hutson, defenseman, threw up 60 assists. So like by far and away was the leader in rookie point scoring. And this one, The Masterson Trophy was for the perseverance and dedication to the game. And this was the one Landy was up for. He did not win it.
He's not going to get it.
This is here's my take. This is the sort of thing that an award is a bad format for, where you have to make it one story like wins the year or something, because the winner went to Sean Monahan of the Columbus Blue Jackets, who was the best friend of Johnny Gaudreau, who passed away before the season started. And that is very sad and tragic. Landy spent 2 years rehabbing his knee. No one was sure he would play again. I don't know how that doesn't get more votes, but that's all I'll say on that before I sound like a bad guy talking smack about a dead man's best friend. But yeah, that's the trophy rundown for our regular season awards. So nice to see Cale get.
Nope, they're
get
tired
his
of Mac
Norris,
and
but
Landy.
No Mac, no
Yeah,
Landy.
Landy.
Maybe he'll get it next year.
Yeah, if the story continues on, who knows what we'll get, the stories of riches.
Indeed. And then last two little notes out of NHL. Some familiar faces in new places are our assistant coach from the Eagles and former player Dan Highnote is now joining the bench as an assistant coach over in Tampa Bay, so he's moving up to the big leagues.
Going to the Lightning.
And Adam Foote, our former captain, defenseman, defensive coach.
Didn't he just get fired as well? Or is that someone else?
So Adam Foote is filling in for the fired Rick Tocchet up in Vancouver. This will be Footer's new first time as a head coach.
Who was our guy who's in Sacramento? I think who's with the Kings. That's the basketball team. The LA Kings.
Rob Blake
was that Blake?
Blake is the guy out with the Kings. I think he had been general manager for a while.
Yeah, I think he got fired.
That might be.
Or if there's a mutual
parting of ways.
Yeah, which is a nice way of saying he got fired.
Yes, they did mutually part ways on May 5th of this year, so after they lost to Edmonton. Rough. That is the roundup on the NHL side, and then PWHL, our one little note. We did see the expansion draft happen on Monday, and after that, 7 rounds of picking back and forth. The consensus around the league is that Vancouver and Seattle are now the top 2 teams in the league. The core 6 have been left relatively depleted. I think Minnesota lost, of their top 5 draft picks of the last 2 years, like rounds 1 and 2, they have 1 of them left. They've lost 3 in the expansion draft and traded 1. Jesus. So there is a little bit of hey, if we do another one of these, maybe we're going to adjust it a little bit.
Yeah, it's crazy that they just kind of they just murdered every other team for the most part.
Now, the caveat to that is we do still have the regular draft coming up later in the month. I believe June 24th or 26th, one of those days, will be the regular yearly draft of new players where everyone will get a chance to get some new talent signed as well. In that one, the Siren have the number 1 pick, as we discussed, and then the expansion teams will have picks 7 and 8, and they will alternate in the rounds on which team gets the higher pick of that round, that's how that's going to go. And then outside of that, there is now still a pretty deep pool of free agents left because, as we said, most of the initial contracts of the league were 2-year, and the 2 first years are up now. So the players who weren't already under contract, didn't get involved in the move around, are now kind of free game for anyone to sign. So we will keep track of how that all shakes out in the off season and make sure you are up to date on what those rosters are looking like before next season rolls around.
Before we leave the hockey world, I think we'd be remiss. How are we feeling about our good friend here, Martin Necas?
Oh, Marty. Well, so there's it's been the rumor mill going around that he wasn't super thrilled about staying in town. Did something happen? Am I missing something?
Not yet, but there is a lot of, I think for sure he has to go.
He's a big candidate to go or get moved. Like we discussed last week with the signing of Brock Nelson at 7.5, we have basically $1 million and some change in cap space with 4 roster spots still to fill up. So yes, there is definitely, if the rumors are true that he doesn't want to intend to sign an extension this year, which I guarantee they are having the conversations with his agent about this summer on whether he wants to do a long-term deal or not, because they either want to lock him in this year, not worry about the dance around trade deadline and all that, with him the same way Miko went down. Or they will, we've seen Chris McFarland will get on the phones and make something happen. So I do fully intend to expect to see a kind of different forward group coming in from what we have on paper right now. The other one is Charlie Coyle potentially getting dealt around somewhere now that Nelson is locked in as well. So we may still just be on the hunt for center depth again.
'Tis the way.
Apparently. But I think that is the thing that we did find out from our kind of weird run last year was that we have a lot of good winger options. So it's maybe worth it to sacrifice one or two of them for improvement in the middle of the line. So I do expect to see something happening, but I couldn't tell you who, what, when, where yet.
Yeah, I don't know what it sucks because that is our Rantanen sort of
him and Drury, and Drury's a solid number 3 guy. Like he's going to be a third, fourth line center, and he's a good face-off asset. But that's not a great return on Miko by itself.
No, it almost makes. I mean, Carolina did sort of what they did, so they don't look quite as bad. We kind of look like we almost lost.
Carolina has a lot of draft capital coming up now that, again, probably won't pay off for a few years, but that might be the sort of thing where we look back and say, this is where they built their power line or whatever.
Yeah, it kind of feels like we lost it in the trade there for sure.
I think in the overall, trade dealings, Dallas kind of came out with what they wanted, but they're going to have their whole salary cap kerfuffle to
very expensive team over there right now.
Yeah, they're over cap, and they have a lot of old guys who need to move along, probably. Carolina probably will, in the end, come out as the overall victor, but again, our situation was just that it was that or lose him for nothing. So given those circumstances, it would have been nice to get more, but better to have gotten something. I think a lot of it will depend, because if you can, if there's something creative where you deal maybe Marty Necas and Charlie Coyle and get a big return package of some solid position guys and maybe a couple of draft picks or prospects to restock the cabinet there, that might be worthwhile as well, because you do also have to worry about the future of this team.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? Can you imagine what if we hadn't made that swap? Marty Necas still in Carolina, and we still have Miko on our team heading into Dallas. Could look a little different.
Oh, the playoff run might have been a whole lot different for sure, but
is it worth it to not get any assets back for the future if you could potentially have a longer run in which you can hold the Lord Stanley's Cup?
Arguably, probably, yeah.
I mean, it's up to like a personal preference.
Yeah, but I mean, most players and executives will be like, yeah, it's pretty worth it to raise the cup. Everyone feels a little better about contract negotiations with the team they won the cup with, more or less. I mean, that used to be more true, I think, actually. In the free agent period now, guys got to chase their raises when they earn them.
Options are we trade them and we kind of did what we did and we end up where we are now, or we keep them, have maybe a longer run. Who knows? Maybe we're in the Stanley Cup final.
It's a bigger gamble to do it that way.
It is, but at the end of the day, right, Nietzsche just doesn't want to be here and we have to free up salary cap versus we just don't sign Rantanen and we have sort of this cap left over.
Potentially.
Maybe.
I think the difference is, though, with this one, having Nietzsche's contract still with a year on it, we can get something of value for him, whether it's of equivalent value or not to Mikko Rantanen. It's still more than we would be getting. Like we'll be getting the cap space and whatever asset we get for Marty. So in the long run GM game, I think we made the right move. The move that gave us more options, I would say.
For sure. Let's take it off the ice here and head over to the hardwood in the basketball world. We'll start with the WNBA to begin here. WNBA's had a little bit of a crazy week. This week, we both had Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark set to return. Paige did return earlier this week where she put up 35 in her return, but was not good enough to beat the team that they were going up against. And Caitlin Clark is set to return this afternoon against the New York Liberty squad. So I'm wishing that Fever team good luck. But from around the week, just some storylines. Vegas still kind of very much so up and down, middling, not the team that we are used to seeing. We saw that I watched them play yesterday against Dallas, where they fought to the very, very bitter end. That Dallas team, I think, is going to be very, very good here probably in the next couple years if they have a few more assets to their name. But not quite there yet. And Vegas is playing without Aja currently, which is probably why they're fluctuating so much up and down right now.
It's tough missing your best player.
The MVP of the league and probably the greatest WNBA player of all time, potentially at the end of her career. But who knows? The other big story coming from the WNBA was Minnesota Lynx losing to Seattle Storm 94-84. Sending is the first Link loss of the season. So is huge. Umbagwale taking over basically for that whole game and doing what she does, getting buckets, and Minnesota really did not have an answer.
Yeah, we saw in the Unrivaled League, Gumbawale can just absolutely dominate when she's on her game.
So New York Liberty is still the only undefeated team in the league currently. Minnesota is right behind them, and a few other teams sort of leading the way to go. A lot of teams right now sort of up and down depending on what their matchups are not. I wish I could get a little bit more out of the Los Angeles Sparks, especially with their team build, but they're very, very up and down. Them and Vegas both, they trying to figure out what the culture is. Vegas lost sort of their energy and spark in Kelsey Plum, and Kelsey Plum's over there with the Los Angeles Sparks trying to figure out how to spark them up a little bit. So we'll keep an eye on the rest of the WNBA for the most part.
Also of note out of the WNBA news this week was the official retirement of Allie Quigley, who was the former Sky guard. She hadn't played in a couple years, but hadn't officially called it quits until now. But she had, in her 14 years, was a 4-time three-point shootout champion, and I think has the record for three-pointers, if not for, definitely for the Sky, maybe league-wide.
The other, just remind me of the other note, Chicago's been suffering, as we've been noting kind of all season long, struggling a little bit, trying to figure out who they were, and maybe they're just a late starter team. They did lose one of their scorers, Courtney Vandersloot, to an ACL earlier this week as well, so they still a little bit, take them a little bit to get off the struggle bus, I think.
It seems, like it's taken a little too long to gain any traction for that team.
A little shocked that they are not better than they were last year. In fact, they're slightly worse, I would say.
It definitely seems like a step back. They I think exceeded expectations last year with the Angel Reese kind of bump of excitement, though.
Yeah, so hopefully they can figure things out over on their side, and we'll see how things go. Remember, WNBA is a little bit shorter. I think they are only a 42-game season, and only the top 8 are going to be in that playoff spot. There are 13 teams now, so still a little bit more than half, but you really got to find a way to get in that top 8. So we will keep track of that and see how they go along. Which brings us now to the big leagues of the NBA. The NBA has been a little crazy this week, not even including the championship playoffs, which we've had going on here. Here in the Denver, should be noted, Russ, of course, did not re-sign with us. He says, peace out. I'm opting out of my player option to kind of go get a little bit more money. So
sure.
Good for him. Opens up some cap for Denver Nuggets. If you're a Denver Nuggets fan, I would expect not to see Russ next year, depending on sort of the moves and what we do here. We still do not have a GM. The draft is a little less than 3 weeks away, a little more than 2 weeks away.
I'm sure it doesn't take longer than a week or so to prep for a draft.
It's fine, I guess. We'll figure it out. Odds are is they'll just sort of choose in-house, which I don't like.
I feel like they certainly have someone who's steering the ship along currently, at least in general.
The assistant general manager who they have currently doing everything, I just don't know why. If you're going to let him take control, why don't you just let him?
I am sure there's some back negotiations going on outside of the media scope that we're trying to wrangle up in time. And it might even be like the sort of thing where they want someone who's like with the Pacers or the Thunder and they have to wait till the season ends.
I have no clue what their thought process is right now. Josh is a Josh is a little bit of a confusing guy. Either way, but New York Knicks had the hope of potentially scooping and stealing Jason Kidd from Dallas. Jason Kidd said, "I'm good," which,
Now, did I read this headline right? Where who's Doc Rivers with this year?
Milwaukee.
They told the Knicks, "Hey, you can interview Doc if you want," and they said, "Nah, we're good."
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are like.
That's a funny one to me.
So they were trying to go after the Houston Rockets head coach and Jason Kidd as sort of their top candidates. Both Houston said, "You're not taking our coach."
Right, yeah.
No.
We kind of have a contract with him.
Yeah, and Dallas is like, "You can enter Jason Kidd if you want." And Jason Kidd's like, "I don't really want to go anywhere. I'm kind of cool here." And like, why would you? You just got Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
You're promised Cooper Flagg. Kyrie, of course, has his ACL and won't be back till later in the season. But core
he's on the roster.
The core is, he's still kind of on the roster for the most part. The core is young, and why would you leave that to go anywhere else? Like, you're building your own thing versus
having to go pick up someone else's mess, essentially.
Yeah, kind of taking a handoff from someone else's team who's very established at this point. So I don't know. Wish them the best of luck. I guess. But the big news, of course, is for the championship series that we have going on here. We are tied 2-2 currently. They split both games. They were in Indianapolis this week, Indiana. That game, the first game, Indiana closed out, came back. Second game, Oklahoma City came back from being down. So really just back and forth between these two teams. Halliburton and Shai, of course, doing the best they can to lead both their teams. They're the guys who have all the eyes on them, and their role players are playing exceptionally well on both sides. You have dudes kind of doing a lot of everything and some more. So it's
a lot of guys kind of stepping up, filling in. I've heard a lot of T.J. McConnell praise, a lot of Ben Mathurin praise.
Yeah, praises from all over the place, depending on which team you're cheering for and which source you're going to look at across the board. There is this question, though, and I think it's a problem. It's going to become a greater problem within the NBA in general, right? There's not super great coverage overall of the NBA finals that we have going on here. I've heard from, I think that's the one thing where Oklahoma City and the Indiana states would agree on, is that this playoff series does not feel as spectacular, and it's mostly because I don't think the NBA is super excited. If you're a basketball, if you're a true basketball fan or a sports fan watching these two teams play,
you're still following, you're still checking in.
Yeah, is great. But for a casual NBA fan, it's just kind of
and the marketing machine just isn't really behind it this year, I would say, for the most part. It's like the series is sponsored by YouTube TV, which is a relative, it's not the biggest sponsor you could find, though. It's a pretty niche thing, and it's attempting to kind of compete with broadcast, it feels like, at that point, trying to drive people to the internet, a streaming option. So there's that whole business side of things where you're trying to redirect eyeballs to, and whether or not that's going successfully or not.
Yeah, the biggest one that I saw was that I think fans from both sides were upset that during the actual coverage of the game or pregame, they're not even covering the game at some point. They're covering everything else that's going on throughout the league,
the drama
and
stuff, and
other sports that are happening. It's we're kind of missing the point and not really giving the praise and glory to these two teams who
tell the stories of the teams who are here for a machine that spends so much time that is not gameplay time talking and discussing things. The allotment of where that attention goes has definitely not been as focused on the on-court action, it feels like.
So that brings me to my question, right? Looking forward, we're not getting the coverage because no one is super excited about Indiana nor the Oklahoma City, because not really big market places and have places to go, not spectacular. I'm sorry, Indiana and Oklahoma. I'm sure you guys are beautiful places for in your own individual rights, but not vacation destinations for people.
Not the like you said, destination locations.
Yeah, for sure. So looking forward in the NBA, we have LeBron James, who is eminently, I'm going to say, retire. He's he's closer to retirement than he is to being sort of in the league, the sort of prominent figure he is in the league, right?
Yep.
We know the NBA is going to choose somebody to be sort of their new face. He's going to have to be American because this is America's sport, right?
Yep.
And he's going to have to be on a big market team.
Yep.
Who is that then?
They're so desperately trying to find that person. I think there was I think a lot of floating for it to be Ant or Jalen Brunson or
So Ant is in Minnesota.
Yep.
I wouldn't consider
Not
that
a big market.
Not a big market.
And then the Knicks still haven't really pulled it through to be a
Yeah, Knicks are a big market, but Brunson, it doesn't have the same star power throughout the. He's beloved in New York because he's their guy, but through the rest of the league, he's not super flashy highlights.
There's a different skill set from being an elite NBA player and then also being a face of a league and like a media personality the way that LeBron is. And he's been very good at both, which is, of his many accomplishments, that I think is one that perhaps maybe gets overlooked, is how from basically a kid as an 18-year-old, he stepped into what was a very demanding job to be the face of the league and stepped into it basically immediately.
The LeBron takeover has taken, I think, a longer because like if we imagine like LeBron in Cleveland, like the first stint he had there, he was a very, very good player. I don't know if I'd consider him quite the face of the league yet.
I think he was the main story of the league, if not the face.
Yeah, he had a lot of eyes on him. I would still say, if we're going to say whose league is this, I would have still probably said this is probably Kobe's league in his time.
That's fair.
But once he skipped out and said, I'm going to go head out to a place like Miami, like Florida.
Once we had a video of I'm taking my talents to South Beach.
Yeah, to somewhere with a bigger market and draw. That's sort of, I think, is where the LeBron takeover started to happen. He did end up going back to Cleveland, and it's shocking to how much one man can contribute to a whole economy of a city.
Oh, yeah.
But he did so there and decided that he needed to step out of there once again to head out to LA.
And so I think that there's that whole extra layer of that's very big shoes to fill as far as who will be the next generation face. I mean, and yeah, for whatever reason, there isn't quite anyone, who is standing out head and shoulders above the crowd. There's, I think, a lot of kind of whack-a-mole of like some guys are looking hot at one moment and then maybe cool back down a little. And
like you said, to be the face means so much more than just like basketball play. Like Anthony Edwards has everything from a media standpoint and whatnot, but where his sort of shortfall is he's still not quite matured yet. He's out there in the playoff. Or not in the playoff, and All-Star game doing a 3-point contest left-handed.
Yeah.
Not like he doesn't really take anything too serious quite yet, which is sort of what his downfall is.
Which is fine from a personal point of view, but from a business standpoint, the NBA wants a little bit more security in or confidence in their choice. Yeah.
Yep. And then we can look elsewhere, like Shai. Shai's
Canadian.
He's Canadian, so that already eliminates him.
Already one negative there.
So can't really do that with him, and he's in Oklahoma City, and he's not super friendly, and his game's not
Wemby's going to be
a
huge story, but he's French.
He also is not. He does like have some amazing highlights, but nothing too flashy. And also, he's not. Wemby, I think, fits perfectly because my man's out in wherever he's practicing with monks. He just shaved his head the other day.
Oh boy.
He's with Buddhist monks straight up.
Nice.
And he's going to figure out like the inner peace of himself. So good for.
Which is a huge piece to have solved as a professional athlete, because then you can just focus on getting good.
Again, not particularly
not super media friendly. Yeah.
Yeah. So can't really be him either. I don't know who the only person that sort of leaves is like Jason Tatum. He has some sort of flashy highlights. I would say he's not great in the media still quite yet, which there's no one quite like LeBron in the media except for Anthony Edwards, but we already talked about him. Jason Tatum is in the big market in Boston. I don't know how Boston counts as a big market myself, but it is in the sports world. Big market out there in Boston. He has all the highlights and things like that, just missing the media piece of everything, and a lot of people do not like him because of
it's definitely a strange problem to have as a league when you're like, we have some of the most like the talented players in the world. None of these guys are particularly good on camera.
Yeah, it's weird. I expect that from the Canadians because that's how the hockey.
That's the standard fare for hockey, and that's why, you don't see Connor McDavid in many commercials.
No, not at all. Even the ones at Makar and
the most media friendly player the league has generated in quite a while is Paul Bissonnette.
And he only got that way, I assume, after he got retired.
Basically, yeah.
Where he's like, I don't really care anymore.
He's in the ideal situation where he was a very good grinder player. He knew what his role was, but he was also, as a player, you're part of the league, the lingo, you're part of the brotherhood of players. So then the fact that, he was willing to get on camera and draw about it and can do it in a more than monotone and doesn't look like he's reading off a prompter. Like, that's the bar to clear for NHL players. Can you make it seem like you're talking naturally and not like you're reading the prompter?
We can look at another player, Tyrese Halliburton, right?
I was going to say Tyrese might get a little bit more looks now, but Indiana is still not really big market. And I think if Indy goes on to win the championship on this one, that'll be a little bit of a boost in his favor, but it still seems unlikely.
I'm slightly worried about how the NBA future looks because you really need to have sort of that face to connect with the sport to make it grow. Like, God only knows how long it took hockey to find someone after Gretzky to sort of take that mantle.
It was Crosby, really.
Yeah, which was how many years?
And that's a good 10-year gap in between the playing time.
Yeah,
it took Crosby a little while to grow into that role. He was not quite so media savvy on his first couple of years. Certainly not to the national level that he was being asked. And even just looking at like today, like we said, McDavid's not particularly personable. We've covered how the Avs guys are not great interviews. Like, it's fun to hear from him, but it's not a particularly, like, you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, let's give this guy 30 minutes to talk on TV. Connor Bedard, he's held up to being like, he's the next big thing pretty well, but he's got so much to focus on just on adjusting to his actual playing.
His plate is full.
Yeah, he doesn't look ready to step into those shoes anytime particularly soon. Yeah, it's wild to be trying to.
Yeah, now that you're speaking about it, it's almost like the NHL has sort of the opposite problem where you have so many different faces now that you can relate to. Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar,
Leon
Draisaitl, the Matt Tkachuk out there in Florida.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to kind of say for NBA is that it seems like they're going to have to, out of necessity, whether or not they want to, flex to a bit more of like regional specific marketing and like, for your intended growing European audience, it's going to be more Luka and Nikola. For your, build your Canadian market with Shai and Jamal and
maybe. I mean, the best thing for them to do is break out of it has to be this American and really try to focus on growing this globally, right? Because if you look even top 10 players, top 15 players in the league, more than half of them are not
international now.
Yeah, not American. Like Luka's probably top 10. Nikola, is top 2 in the world. Shai is top 2 in the world. Wemby's top 5, 10 in the world.
Certainly top 10.
Giannis, top 10.
Yep.
That's already
five guys.
Yeah, 4 or 5 guys.
That's the half of your list right there.
It'd be crazy to do because, like I said, this has been America's sport since, oddly enough, Canadian founded it, born in sort of America, the whole thing. But it's crazy to think that there's so much good basketball talent around the world, and now that the NBA is trying to grow it a little bit more, really outside of the bounds of the United States, it may be time for such a significant change in the NBA model.
I think the other element that we have to consider for especially this particular era of the NBA is the fact that the players don't have to rely on the league giving them that blessing of being the guy for them to get into media ventures that they want to be in. So the rise of all the player podcasts out now, that they can, talk say what they want to say on their own platforms now. They don't need to go through league media and stuff and have to censor themselves in whatever way and that type of thing. I'm sure there's still, there are contract clauses about what they can and can't get up to and whatnot, but
Yeah, there's things they still can and cannot say on the like. Never ever talk about officials ever. It's always an immediate fine, of course.
Yeah, of course. But in general, like there are other avenues for players who are interested in those sorts of things where they can do it to their own pace and at their own comfort level with people they want to be doing those projects with, and it's less dependent on like getting a Nike advertisement deal or that sort of thing. So that like, and then I think there's another element of that of them. The ability to not have to make yourself the mainstream friendly like persona, which very few players seem interested in, especially out of college.
Fair enough. With that being said, what's our trivia look like this week?
Oh boy. Well, so this was actually kind of a tough week for me to pick a theme for our quiz, but what I went with this week for our closing quiz is an expansion quiz, a quiz about the many movements and expansions of our beloved sports leagues. I've got 5 questions on the board with a bonus point. So let's see how well you know the history of our beloved sports leagues. Let's see here. We'll start with, I think this is the easiest one. So let's see if that helps you out here. Which Big Four league has had the most recent expansion draft? MLB, NFL, NHL, or NBA? And they've all been within your lifetime. So
yeah, I think the NHL was the most recent one because the Kraken came not too long ago. The NBA hasn't expanded quite yet. There are plans, I think, to bring on 2 teams very, very soon, Vegas and Seattle. Don't know what, well, I do know what that means. Some teams on the East needs to be actually in the East.
Yep.
MLB, I don't know. They've been 30 teams for God only knows how long, for at least 100 years now. In the NFL, we haven't expanded at all. The last one to come in was Jacksonville, I do believe, but that was in the 2000s-ish. Panthers actually were the last one, was the 2000s.
No, that's not quite the team, but so NHL was your final answer?
Yeah.
You are correct. The 2021 expansion draft for the Kraken was the most recent. The NFL was 2002 for the Texans.
Oh, I forgot about Houston. Yeah, they were there.
NBA was 04 for Charlotte. And MLB was 1997 was our last expansion draft there.
Who was that? Arizona?
I think that was
or Florida.
Tampa Bay, maybe. Yeah. And then speaking of the MLB, though, which of these MLB teams who have never changed their name is the oldest? Is that the Toronto Blue Jays, the New York Mets, the Kansas City Royals, the Detroit Tigers, or the San Diego Padres? Those 5 teams have never had to change their name. Which one has had their name for the longest?
I think the Detroit Tigers are the oldest. Are we yeah, they have to be the oldest because I assume baseball starts over there on the east and moves its way out to the west. Padres are an old team. The other ones I don't think have been around, but I know the Tigers are like almost one of the original teams.
You are correct. The Detroit Tigers were one of the original 1901 American League teams. They've been the Detroit Tigers since 1894. The Mets have been around since 62. The Royals and Padres came into the league together in 69. And the Blue Jays have been here since 77.
Look at us expanding to Canada so early.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how, aggressive Canadians have been in trying to get an MLB team.
We want baseball. Why?
Now, the other side of that question, which MLB franchise has changed their name the most in their history? Is that the Phillies, the Orioles, the Angels, the Dodgers, or the Braves?
What are we defining as like a name change? Like you change locations, does that count as a name change in your
That would count as a name change, yeah.
So I think...
But some teams have stayed in the same location and just changed their names.
Yes, they have. So what were my options?
So I'll give you the rundown again. Phillies, Orioles, Angels, Dodgers, or Braves. And there is a little bit of a reason I'm not giving any other part of the name.
Yeah, I think the Angels are... They've been Anaheim, Los Angeles at Anaheim. I think they are the one that changes the most. Dodgers have kind of always been the Dodgers, but they've bounced around Brooklyn over to LA. So they're probably like 3 name changes to them. They might have been somewhere else. Anaheim is always like changing their name for some reason or another. The Other ones I don't know enough about.
Well, you're about to learn some history because it is the Dodgers have changed their name 10 times in their franchise history, although all of it has been kind of way before our time. Braves are second on the list with 7. They've moved around a bunch.
Yeah, I didn't know. I figured they would probably bounced around a little bit on the East Coast before they settled down in Brooklyn and then moved out to LA.
So I'll give you the rundown because there's some dandies in here. The franchise we know as the LA Dodgers began in 1883 as the Brooklyn Grays. The next year in 84, they said, never mind, we are the Brooklyn Atlantics. And then the next year they said, never mind, we're actually the Brooklyn Grays again from 85 to 87.
I like the leagues back in the old days where you could just rename yourself whatever you want. They're like, whatever.
Because then you're going to love this one. In 1888, they changed their name to the Brooklyn Bridegrooms. You know, that's a good sports team name.
They're all like company sponsored, so they got a good deal with somebody.
They ran that for 2 years, and then in 1891 said, no, wait, we're just going to shorten it to the Brooklyn Grooms. We don't need the Bridegrooms, just Brooklyn Grooms.
We got a divorce.
Did that for 4 years, and then in 1896, they said, actually, classics don't die. It's the Brooklyn Bridegrooms again. And they ran with that for 2 more years before they said 1899. All right, turn of the century, guys. We got to come up with something better. We got to settle on something. And I think we got to let people know how good at the game we are. We're going to be the Brooklyn Superbas.
Sounds like a car.
It sure does. And they ran with that for 11 years until 1910.
The car broke down.
And then they became the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers for a couple of years. And then in 1913 said, we can shorten that. Brooklyn Dodgers. Much smoother, much simpler, much cleaner. And then they said, no, wait, hold my beer, 1914. We don't like that anymore. We're the Brooklyn Robins. That's much cleaner. And they ran with that for 15 years till 1931, where they said, classics never die. Brooklyn Dodgers, back again, baby. Until 1957, when they said, actually, there's too many teams in New York, so we're moving out to California. We're going to be the LA Dodgers. And the rest is history. So that is the story of the Dodgers' many name changes. I found that list too hilarious to not share. So we covered our MLB. We've got 2 more on the board here. You're 2 of 3 so far. A very solid showing. And this one's up your alley. This is a basketball one. Since the ABA-NBA merger in 1976, how many seasons has the league had an odd number of teams? And your options are 0, 2, 9, 14, or 24.
Wow, what a wide spread of shotgun numbers.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine they would have had at some point an odd number.
There's been a lot of bouncing around of changing and whatnot.
Teams coming in, existing, not existing. Some
and almost like always expansions happen in pairs.
Usually, apparently not always. Because WNBA is at 13, which is a little odd. But they only really care about the top 8.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you're not worried about even conferences, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Nope. 14 seems like a lot, though. That almost seems like too many. But then how many years are you? How often are you bringing in teams?
Yeah, like how many expansions have there been since 76?
Yeah, I mean, if Charlotte is the last team to come in the NBA, which you've informed me of, that means there had been an odd number before that, because now I know that there's 32 total. 30, 32?
Interesting logic. 30. Yep.
Might be 30. So 29 there. Been a lot. They don't have expansions very often. I'm gonna go with 14 for some reason. It feels like too many, but it also feels like just the right too many.
This was my fun one in my research. 24 is the correct answer.
Jeez.
Since 1980 till 04, when the Charlotte was added into the league, the NBA was running odd numbered in the total because so it was 22 total teams after the merger in 76, and they were fine with that for 4 years. And then they said in 1980, here are the Dallas Mavericks, and it threw off the whole numbering system. And then after that, all the expansions were even numbered. So they just stayed as an odd number.
Well, they figured it out at least.
They solved it after 24 years.
They figured out the problem and they had a fix, sure.
Yep. Fantastic. And our last question of the day. The NHL is the only Big Four to have a dispersal draft in the modern era. Which team's collapse led to their roster being dispersed? And your options are the California Golden Seals, the Cleveland Barons, or the Minnesota North Stars.
North Stars are the Dallas Stars now. That was the move. I know that from the Mighty Ducks, I do believe. So that not technically a dispersal, but it is a movement. Also strange that why would you ever take a team out of Minnesota? It's like it's like Canadian Light over there. Cleveland Barons sound like a pretty good option, but I'm trying to think of the logos I've seen in my NHL lifetime.
Oh, sure. I mean, the North Stars are the only one you ever would have seen. So.
No, but I know they exist because of Mighty Ducks, which is the only reason I ever know they. It's where I get all my hockey history from the Mighty Ducks movies.
It's a pretty good little time capsule.
It is. California or Cleveland? California doesn't seem like a good option for hockey. Ohio is cold, and they do like hockey out there. I feel like Cleveland is the right one. The California Seals feel like a what's the equivalent to like
a minor league?
Yeah, like a minor league team. I think that is like a minor league team, so I'm gonna go with Cleveland.
Okay. Well, I have a fun answer for you. You are correct, but also this was a trick question. All of them are the same franchise, and any one of them would have been the correct answer.
Yes.
So yes.
All the above.
And your logic was a little kind of hilariously backwards. The Cleveland Barons did end up they were the major league. So I'll give you the history. What was originally the California Golden Seals got moved out to Ohio to become the Cleveland Barons because
you can't play hockey in California. The cooling was not probably good back then.
The early 70s were not quite ready for California hockey yet. No Gretzky to draw people in. So they moved out to Ohio, which is where the owner's hometown was from, and they became the Cleveland Barons. And after about 2 or 3 years, they were not doing well financially, and neither was the franchise known as the Minnesota North Stars. So the owner of the Barons said, I know, we'll buy the North Stars and combine those two teams, and they'll just be the new Minnesota North Stars, but it'll be the combination from the two teams.
That's crazy that they would allow that.
Right. But the league was like, yes, we don't want two teams to fold in, like, to keep two teams from folding, we'll let them combine into one okay team. And then that now Minnesota North Stars team only lasted another, I think, 12 years or so, till about 91. And then they said, hey, we want to move back to California again when we were the Golden Seals. Can we do that? And they were like, no. But what we'll let you do is we'll expand the league, we'll give you the California team, and you have to sell the Minnesota team. So that is how the San Jose Sharks came out of the California Golden Seals, and the Minnesota North Stars were sold off and then were eventually moved to become the Dallas Stars.
Who gets the team, dude? Who gets the players?
So in the 91, they had two different dispersal drafts. They had one for the Barons North Stars merger, and then for the expansion to the San Jose Sharks, they let the Sharks have an expansion draft off of the Minnesota roster before they sold the team, and then got the expansion draft off the rest of the league. Absolutely insane.
It's crazy. I'm gonna sell the team I have, buy a new team, and then I'm gonna,
because the thing that the other owners didn't want was for the team to just relocate instead of getting a new franchise fee for the expansion team. So they basically just made the Cleveland team pay the expansion fee.
That's logic here. I'm a logic guy because I'm a math major and whatnot. Sure. It's not an expansion if you move. Like it's not when I move I expand my house every single time. Like ideally I do, but that's not how it always works.
It's true. But yes, so that is the fun history of the dispersal draft.
That's crazy.
Indeed. So yeah, 3 out of 5.
I'll take it. I like it.
Solid showing.
The NBA out here running with odd numbers, destroying
I found
the world.
that I was like, that can't possibly be right. They did that for so long. What were they thinking?
Well, you add the one is like, this is pretty good, but now we're all lopsided over here, and then it's like, added by 2s now. Mm-hmm. But they're like, but sir,
that keeps us still lopsided.
Sir, we're lopsided. He said,
we're gonna keep adding in even numbers.
Yeah, we can't add in odd numbers. It makes us all lopsided. But sir, we're already lopsided. You don't. No. Let it happen. Let it breathe.
Oh, boy. Well, that is it for us this week, gang. Thank you once again for coming by This Week in Sports. As always, if you enjoyed the program, give us a follow on Spotify. Give us a little rating, ideally 5 stars, but we'll take anything at this point.
We will not take anything at this point. We will
Okay.
only take 5 stars. I will hunt you down. You give me anything less.
Okay, amend that. Only 5 stars as the rating allowed. Anything else, and you're getting a visit from Zach. We are also on the YouTube. Find us there and on our website at 321pods.com. And with that, I think we are done for this week.
We are indeed. Go Panthers, go Indiana. We will have those series wrapped up next week, and we will either be happy or sad because I'm a little bit of a hater. So,
Yes, we may have a scathing report on the end of the seasons for NBA and NHL, but we will still have baseball and WNBA to look forward to for the summer.
baseball, WNBA, and football is, you can smell it in the air. Just it's wafting, not full force yet, but you can. It's around the corner.
Yeah, the camps and whatnot will be here sooner than later, I'm sure.
I'm curious what I feel like we have something going on this summer. Like, is it because we're 25? No, it's World Cup. World Cup isn't until next
World
year.
Cup and Olympics are next year. Or no, World Cup is next year, and then Olympics are 28. Yeah, so the odd number years don't get much going on, I'm afraid.
Nope. So it'll be fun to see the rest of the. We'll probably cover the WNBA a little bit more intensely.
Yeah, might get some other sports news covered, but yeah, we will see.
Ooh, you know what would be kind of real fun is we go a little obscure and we find some new crazy sports that happen, like the Ocho.
Okay. I mean, I've been keeping a little bit of tabs on the Ultimate Frisbee Association, so.
That's good association. I'll narrow down. I'll start to watch the marble races. Let's go.
Okay. Yes, those are equivalent sporting endeavors. Very good. I think that's what you can look forward to on our next edition of This Week in Sports. But until then, I have been your hockey and baseball watcher, Nick, with our basketball, football watching, Zach.
We'll see you guys next week.
Adios, gang.